or trying to observe something happening within your body, or if there's a pain um, in some part of your brain, uh, I'll try to feel that pain more and more and more, more clearly. When I start observing that pain, it takes a while, but the body's resources are targeted towards fighting off that pain,
Mm.
and it will disappear.
Hmm.
Which means by being in the present tense without using a drug, by just concentrating the resources within your body, you could cure a pain. And that can happen when you are in present tense, when you are in awareness. The awareness of the pain being there is what tells the body to try and solve for it.
It's easier said than done, right? It's not. it- It's it's a it's a fight with ourselves, the mind. It's not. Yeah, of course we know. I'll try to focus on my breath, but as I indulge in any activities, I forget. My mind starts doing its thing, and all the I get into that mess again. It's yeah, maybe uh, I start observing my breath right now, and after probably 2 hours, I would have shifted into some parallel universe. I would be thinking about something, and then suddenly after 2 hours, I see, hey, I was doing this, but then I stood. And I've tried it. I've tried practicing observing my breath, but this has happened. 3 hours, I'm drifted away, and then I come back, and I'm like, okay, and again I do. But when you're doing any activity, it is not. Uh, it's not possible to be in that sense of awareness all the time. Is it impossible, or is it something that needs a lot of practice? And if it needs a lot of practice with the current system that we are in, the work that we do, this kind of setup that we are in, it's I would say it's very difficult. What would you say about that? Because you're saying being in the perfect present tense as one of the most important uh, feature or factor. I want to get this right.
See, there are two ways that I can suggest. One, um, even within your current setup, wherever you are staying and whatever activities you are engaged in, there's always space. So in that space, you would generally get distracted with movies or chit chat or unnecessary calls or gossip, something like this, or simply browsing on the net. So have a big reminder somewhere in your room that says, observe your breath.
Hmm.
So whenever you are doing an activity, you're doing it. Whenever you draw back from that activity, what you see is observe your breath. You're reminded, okay, let me observe now till I am pulled into another activity. Um, Again, when you're
I'll
pulled into,
sorry to stop you. Just want to clarify something. So when I'm involved in an activity, you're saying I cannot do that in parallel, right? That I cannot observe my breath and actually fully be involved in some activity.
depends on the kind of activity.
What if I'm coding?
You cannot. You cannot. Coding, watching movies, it pulls your mind completely. Like while watching a movie, I would say in coding, the mind is absorbed more than even in a movie.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're thinking of the code, previous lines of code, next line of code, and how it will interact with other
Mm,
parts of code. And your mind is doing all kinds of loops trying to go in that code. It's
mm,
so absorbed that there could be a snake, there could be a cobra that has come
mm,
and slept beside your seat, and you wouldn't know. And the mind is completely involved. It loses all sense of the surroundings.
mm,
You have That's the loss of awareness, the other direction.
mm,
So that was one way that I told, put a reminder. There are certain activities, like maybe you're running, you observe your breath. You can do that. And the breath goes in a rhythm. That's how you can keep running for long. You're doing some physical activity that does not require you to think, then your mind is more aware, your physic gets better. You do a mental activity that doesn't require you physically being active, your body becomes stale, weak, and your mind becomes dull, involved, less aware. So when we started looking for body comfort and kept increasing it year by year, day by day, the way the society has gone is all about increasing body comfort, not happiness for the mind. They think it's happiness for the mind, but you're actually losing your mind and thinking you're happy. For example, when somebody does a party, goes to a pub, they are out of their minds. They think that's happiness. That's the complete opposite direction. And you
yeah,
watch a
otherwise,
movie,
true. Otherwise, how would we explain the restlessness that we experience, right? I mean, it's mostly we are experiencing restlessness.
your mind is so involved in activities like coding that it just pulling it out to draw back. You feel like in the weekend you have to go to a pub and dance so that your mind can be thrown elsewhere out
Yeah.
of that code.
This is a funny thing. I just want to share my personal experience. So there was some task that I was working on. Um, Probably a week, I was fully occupied in that. I was working probably 10 to 12 hours a day. And after that whole week, probably another week after that, I realized I was constipated. And then I didn't think that this had any relationship with that because obviously, like you said, we don't have awareness. And then when I tried doing that again, so that is when I tried to slow it down. I didn't know, like, this happened like multiple times, that when I was completely involved in some task or something that is related to work, when I was especially coding, this used to happen. So after a couple of times, I realized probably this is happening, and I realized when we are so involved that I am not even aware that my body wants to. I want to poop, and I'm just sitting there working the whole day, and I'm constipated. So yeah, I think I will agree with this point that we not only lose awareness about the surroundings, but even about our body, and that's very dangerous, right? A reminder we need, definitely.
Yeah. Software programmers need good insurance.
We do.
So the other thing is trying to move into areas where there's less of the mind to be lost in. For example, if you are in the countryside, there's much lesser to disturb you. So then your awareness will expand. If you are in a city, because of a lot of noise from all the directions, the amount of space that you are concerned about decreases gradually.
Mm.
and it has already decreased drastically. So we try to avoid noises that are being aware of noises that are happening outside our room below a particular loudness. But if you pay attention, you will hear dogs barking in some other street, construction happening somewhere else, different kinds of bikes moving around, somebody dropping a bucket somewhere. There are buses that are moving, there's sounds of traffic, leaves rustling in the wind, everything. And the tiny drops of water that are still drizzling from the rain that just dropped. Everything. And a bird that makes a sound somewhere in the background. That kind of awareness you have to develop. Like you can develop. And when you let yourself be in an open space with much less activity, mhm, your senses will start trying to perceive what's farther away. And if they are put in a threat, like you are afraid, then you want to know a threat in much more in advance, so they will expand even more.
We clearly need practice. We need to do this repetitively, and we need to practice this. But in the city setup, like you mentioned, it's not possible. So, yes, are you suggesting that we take some time out, go into the wilderness and try it out, or what should we do? Because it's not something that you will suddenly one day you go out there, there's a real threat for you, and it comes to you. Even though you are aware of all these concepts, it's just still conceptual understanding. But actually, how you react and how you behave is something you will understand when you're in that threat environment. So, is there something that we can do? What can we do? I mean,
You can do both. Like you can also put something that reminds you, and whenever you get a chance, you can also mm, try to spend time where there's literally no space. Uh, Even if you put, there's a problem with people who have not tried to observe their surroundings. Like there's a shortcoming that I just felt like telling you. You can spend time in the open space where there's no other sound. But even in such places, I've seen people who have come with friends, just one or two friends, and they're constantly talking to each other.
hmm,
And they're not letting their minds explore into the surroundings at all.
hmm,
Being in that space did them little to no good.
hmm,
Blabbering so much in such a serene environment without trying to see what actually is there other than human voices. I think it's, I don't know, something should be wrong with them.
you also bring up a good point about company. Maybe we can talk about that later. That's also an important thing, I believe. But in that case, like if you have a good company where you resonate, with all these concepts, then if that is the intent where you're going, then it's great, right? So that company is also important where people are actually not. Now you do see uh, people going for trekking and all that, but not necessarily the intent is just to relax and to enjoy and it's just a weekend get away from all this noise. But this is not something that we are trying to focus on when we try to be in the wild. So it's only after we try to uh, get this understanding of this is, we might probably be in this situation. And it's not just that there will be a threat someday, so that is why we need to practice all this. These also have a lot of other benefits with our everyday, with most of our functions. I would say it's a overall push to our well-being, because that is who we are. Just because in the past 10, 20 years a lot of things changed doesn't mean we our genetical changes happened, or the way how we used to live before. All that obviously doesn't change in 20 years or so. So how do we like, where I'm trying to get to is, with all the noise and everything, so we need a good company, or maybe we try to go alone, and do. That's the best thing I would say. Going, but still, I think there's a company needed when we are talking about threat and all that. To an extent, I guess it is required. What is your thought about that?
So if you can't find somebody who will keep quiet, then go alone. Um, but there could be like-minded people who also want to experience nature and not experience their friends talking while they are sitting in nature. And it's not about what you're doing right now or what has been happening in recent days. It's about what you understand now and how you take it from here. There's still a lot of scope. Every person can start. Somebody who starts today might have little expanded awareness because of it, which he might survive tomorrow. So that's the spirit with which you must take it forward. And of course, there's a lot of other ground to cover, and maybe we can catch up again.
Yeah, we can take a short break and we can come back and discuss survival again.